Hey everyone, I'm ArmorGaming, welcome back to my channel and welcome to Monster Analysis. Up for analysis today is Ingvar's pets. Warning, this monster is just a monster info, just kidding. Unfortunately, I can't see the actual description of Ingvar's pet and I'm too lazy to go to the website and actually find the real description. So anyways, let's skip to this monster design, which I think is really awesome. He looks really powerful. He has a great design, but unfortunately, let's look at his stats. Actually, before we jump into stats, I need to mention that there are currently 21 light legendary monsters. So Ingvar's pet will be compared to the rest of these monsters. And with that being said, Ingvar's pet has a power of 2,926. I mentioned this monster looks really fierce and powerful. Unfortunately, this is the worst power of all the light legendary monsters. His life on the other hand is 32,874, which is tied for the highest life for light legendary monsters. It's tied with Hasai. And once again, unfortunately, his speed 3,267, that is rather low. This puts him tied for 17th place, along with Hasai and General Ingvar himself. And as for his trait, he is a general's pet, so he has tough. All status effects have a 35% less accuracy against this target, which is an absolutely amazing trait to have. 65% of the time you will be immobilized, the other 35% of the time you won't be. So moving on to skills, we have Bull Headbutt, Brutal Hit, nothing interesting here. Ingvar Stampede deals very heavy light damage to all enemies, may stun all targets. So this is a light based AoE that deals 65 damage to all of the enemy monsters, and it's an AoE stun. Now this is a good ultimate just because it stuns, so the 65 damage, it's nice that this skill deals damage, but Ingvar's pet, he's not really much of an attacker, he's more of a tank. You can make him an attacker, and if you use him for Team Wars, you might have to. I'll get more into that later, but you should just know the ultimate, the fact that it stuns, this makes it a pretty good ultimate. In skills group 1, we have Dazing Charge, Pet's Faith, Minor Blessing. None of these skills are really that interesting, so on to skills group 2. And oddly enough, I have to say, even for Ingvar's pet, his skills group 2 isn't really that interesting either. We start things off with Stunning Stampede. Deals heavy special damage, 50% chance of stunning target. This is a special based skill that targets a single enemy. It deals 50 damage, costs 26 stamina, and it has no cooldown, but it only has a 50% chance to stun. If this would have been a regular stun, with a 0 cooldown and 50 damage being special based, this monster could have been a lot better. But this skill being 50%, I have no idea why the developers did that, especially for a skills group 2 skill, so unfortunately I can't even recommend this skill. And contradictory to what I just said that I can't recommend it, depending on the kind of build you want to run for Ingvar's pet, you might be forced to actually use this skill. Specifically just because it does deal 50 damage and it's special based. You look at the other skills, they're light based. Lightning Bolt, his next skill is an AoE, so let's talk about that. Lightning Bolt deals low special damage to all enemies, may daze targets, requires cooldown. So a special based AoE that deals 30 damage to all of the enemy monsters, costs 35 stamina, 3 turn cooldown, and it dazes. Now this is a really good skill to start the game off. Dazing reduces the enemy's power by 25% and it also decreases their accuracy by 25%. And even if they do manage to land a hit, it's only going to be 75% effective. So you're possibly going to want to run this skill. Next up is Medium Blessing. Gains a 30% shield, requires cooldown. So we have a self skill that costs 24 stamina, has a 2 turn cooldown, and you basically get a small 30% shield. Now considering Ingvar's pet is pretty tanky, and considering that you're most likely going to want to give this monster a life rune since he is supposed to be a tank, a small shield becomes a pretty big shield. Still though, it is rather unfortunate that it does have a 2 turn cooldown, it's only 30%, and it doesn't even attack the enemy. Nonetheless, once again, you may or may not want to run this skill. Like I said, skills group 2, there's really nothing too interesting about it. So thus we move into skills group 3, Bull Taunt. Deals moderate light damage, caster will receive all single target attacks, requires cooldown. Light based attack that deals 45 damage to a single enemy, costs 28 stamina with a 2 turn cooldown, and it gives you protection. Protection draws all of the enemy single target hits to Ingvar's pet, which I know on the surface can sound pretty good because you might be thinking this is a really good way to keep your common and your uncommon alive, but just think about it. If it's a Team Wars involving light, some other element, and the common for example, and you put all speedruns on Ingvar's pet just so that he can go before the enemy monsters, and you start the game off with Bull Taunt, this only protects against single target hits. If the enemy does an AoE, most likely your common isn't going to be able to survive anyways. And furthermore, if you're running all speedruns on Ingvar's pet, what about your other monster? Is he an attacker or is he a denier? If he's a denier, it's most likely also running all speedruns. If it's an attacker, well then the enemy is probably going to have a denier to immobilize your attacker, in which case you have Ingvar's pet, who is really fast and pretty tanky, but he can't deal that much damage. And then you have your attacker with base life and probably base speed or 1 speedrun, and he's probably not going to be able to do much, in which case you probably lose. So yeah, anyways, that's Bull Taunt, and regardless of what kind of Ingvar's pet you decide to build, you're going to want to run Bull Taunt. Next up is Frontal Charge. Deals heavy light damage, removes all positive status effects from target, requires cooldown. Here we have a light based attack that deals 50 damage to a single enemy monster. It costs 28 stamina and it only has a 1 turn cooldown. And this skill also removes all positive effects from the enemy monster. And honestly, I think this is one of the better skills Ingvar's pet actually has. A lot of light monsters tend to give buffs to themselves or to their teammates, so being able to eliminate those positive buffs can be really good, especially since this skill only has a 1 turn cooldown, meaning every other turn you're going to be able to remove those positive effects. And this is actually another reason why I said that if Stunning Stampede was actually a regular stun, this monster could have been a lot better overall. Can you imagine just stunning, removing positive effects, stunning, removing positive effects whenever you needed to? That would have been awesome. But unfortunately, they decided to give him a 50% chance to stun. Anyways, Frontal Charge, a skill you definitely must have on your Ingvar's pet. And last but not least, we have Major Shield. Gives a 100% shield to target, requires cooldown. We have another stealth skill that costs 24 stamina, has a high 4 turn cooldown, but you get a full shield, a 100% shield for the following 2 turns. It goes without saying that on a tanky monster like Ingvar's pet, you definitely want to run Major Shield. So not even counting life runes, just base life, using Major Shield will give you a 32k shield. That is insanely big. Which, as I mentioned previously, is why Ingvar's pet is a tanky monster. Now, unfortunately for Ingvar's pet, this game doesn't really favor tanks unless they are like extraordinarily good tanks, which Ingvar's pet really isn't. So there's quite a few different routes you can go with Ingvar's pet if you're realistically trying to use this monster in Team Wars, which I honestly don't recommend, and that's only just because once again the dynamic of Team Wars, you normally run an attacker and a deny monster. So if the other element is going to be the deny monster, then Ingvar's pet is forced to be the attacker. I mentioned he doesn't necessarily have the highest attack for light legendary monsters, and just scrolling through his skills, Stunning Stampede is your strongest skill, 50 damage. There's a lot stronger light legendary monsters, so if you need an attacker, I'd go elsewhere. But if you don't have anyone else and you absolutely must use Ingvar's pet, in terms of offense, I recommend Stunning Stampede, Lightning Bolt, Frontal Charge, and Major Shield. This skill set runs 3 offensive skills, one of which is AoE Daze, the other of which is 50 damage, 0 cooldown, and has the possibility to stun. The other one is 50 damage, has a 1 turn cooldown, and can remove positive effects, which will come in handy when going up against light legendary monsters. And of course, Major Shield, a 100% shield, so even though you're an attacker, you're still extremely tanky. And as for runes, so there's several ways to go about it. You can go 2 strength runes and a speed rune. I normally say to capitalize on the monster's strongest strength, in which case for Ingvar's pet would be his life, but because he is tanky and because he has Major Shield, I don't really think you need that life rune. However, you could add a life rune, in which case he'd be harder to kill, he would deal less damage, and he'd still be pretty fast. So you could always go the 1 strength, 1 life, 1 speed rune route. Another skill set I can see, which you would realistically only use in a Team Wars involving a legendary monster as a rarity, would be Bolt Taunt, Major Shield, Frontal Charge, and Lightning Bolt. And in this case, the only purpose of Ingvar's pet would be to be a secondary supporter monster. He's there to be what he was designed to be, a tank to take hits. For runes, I would actually recommend to give this monster all team speed runes. I think this is actually the first time I've recommended all team speed runes on a legendary monster, but honestly with Ingvar's pet, that's probably his best option. And once again, this skill set and rune set I only recommend in Team Wars involving 2 elements and legendary, or legendary light and some other elements. Because in these situations, you'd have a deny monster, you'd have an attacker, and then Ingvar's pet, he could use Bolt Taunt to draw single target attacks to him. He has a Major Shield, so it's going to be really hard to kill him. He can remove positive effects from the enemy monster, and he can daze all of the enemy monsters. So this is my recommended skill set if you're going for a secondary supportive monster build set. And as for the final skill set I can see for Ingvar's pet, it would have to be Major Shield, Frontal Charge, Medium Blessing, and Lightning Bolt. And this skill set would probably work the best on a defensive Ingvar's pet build. And I think this skill set would probably work the best if it was a Team Wars involving like a common or an uncommon, sometimes even a rare. And the whole point of this skill set, I don't really think Ingvar's pet will win you the game. As the AI, I don't think it'll win. My whole intention for this skill set is just to eliminate the enemy's common, uncommon, or the rare. You run Lightning Bolt so you can have an AoE which would probably be strong enough to take out a common, maybe even the uncommon. The rare, if they're running life runes, it probably wouldn't kill them. And you're also running Frontal Charge to have a single based attack on a 1 turn cooldown, which means every other turn you're going to be able to use this. And the purpose of running Medium Blessing and Major Shield is just to always have some sort of defense on you. Once again, the only purpose of General Ingvar at this point is just to eliminate the enemy's rarity monster. You can't control the AI, you have no idea what the AI is going to do, so you might as well just give the AI some skills to work with. At the very least, what you're trying to do is just to make the enemy win 2 coins from the battle. Yeah, sure, they're still going to win the battle, but at least you're reducing the number of coins they win, which may just end up helping your team win the overall war. And for runes, you can either go 1 strength, 1 life, 1 speed rune, or you can go 2 life runes and a speed rune. Anyways, that's really all I have to say about Ingvar's pet. Please let me know what you guys thought about this analysis, and also be sure to let me know, what do you guys think about Ingvar's pet? Do you think he's good? Do you think he's not so good? How do you think he compares to the other light monsters? Would you consider using this monster on defense? Would you consider using this monster on offense? I'm really curious to hear all of your guys' thoughts. Personally, I don't think I'd use this monster in offense or defense unless I was bored and just wanted to have a little fun. But regardless, I'm really curious to hear what you guys have to say. And like always, also be sure to let me know what monster you want to see analyzed next. And remember to dream big and pursue your passions.